Vaping. What is the deal with this nicotine? Let's get into it. K-Rugs, the Soberdog here. I'm just venting about nicotine right now. Here's a little bit of my nicotine background in history. And before I get into it, hit that subscribe, that like, notifications. If you do, a dog will get a bone. Which dog and where? I don't know, but I know a dog's gonna get a bone. So you might as well hit it. All right, nicotine. Nicotine goes hand in hand, unfortunately, with addiction. It just does. A lot of people in any aspect of addiction, alcohol, drugs, even gambling, whatever, use nicotine. And then in the recovery world as well. Why so much in the recovery world? I think there's a couple of reasons. I think there's a lot of cases of people like myself who used prior to recovery. Then when I got off of drugs, and alcohol, it was like, all right, I'm gonna focus on the worst things, so the heroin, coke, all that, but I'm not gonna get rid of the nicotine yet, because it helped me cope. An addiction doctor that I know very well that has been doing this for about 30 years, I asked her one time, we were talking about rehabs, and she said if I owned a rehab center or ran one of the first things I would do is increase the smoke breaks. I said, really? That's unique, because most of them are doing the opposite. They're getting rid of them and making it nicotine free. And her philosophy basically was, that's what people at that period are using to cope. Let them have it to cope and worry about whatever they're worrying about, and then they can worry about the nicotine further down the line. I totally agree with that, and I see that. I'm involved in recovery here in Rochester a lot of the 12-step stuff, and I can't tell you how many people I know with 20, 30 years sober, 15 years sober, they smoked the first couple years, and when they were ready, they quit. For me, I started with cigarettes. That's what I started with. It was kind of, I'm sure, like a lot of you, sitting in my buddy's basement, having a couple beers. Somebody says, yo, when you have a cigarette after your third beer, it kicks your buzz off, man. Okay. Boom, take a couple hits. Ooh, buzzed. But I was playing football, so I always kept it in check. Like, I can't be a smoker. I'll never, I said, prior to that, I'll never touch cigarettes in my life. Yeah, that was another line crossed. So then, as I'm doing that, maybe 2 a weekend, it slowly starts progressing because of how addictive it is. The next weekend, 3 or 4 during that night. Then if I'm doing 3 or 4 Friday and Saturday night, during the week, there's going to be some point where I'm going to maybe crave 1 or 2. I'll probably be able to hold off for a while, but then there's going to be that day where it's a Tuesday and that craving comes and you give in. Then the Friday and Saturday went from 3 or 4 to 8 or 9. Progressed up. Still throughout all of high school, I never consistently smoked because of football, but it was always there in the background. I always smoked on weekends and going out and stuff. Also along this time, I was introduced to chew. Chewing tobacco got brought in because, especially with athletes, it's very common because you don't want to smoke because it's going to hinder your performance, but chewing's not. So a lot of athletes chewed, and a lot of the football team chewed, and I got introduced to it. Then when I got to college, it was a whole new world of chew. I live in Rochester, New York. I went to college in Edinburgh, University of Pennsylvania. Pretty rural area of PA. A lot of rural people from Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, all over. They, out of like the 90-man roster, including all the freshmen and red shirts and everything, probably a solid 40 to 45 chewed hard, including the majority of the coaches. So it was everywhere, and my chew game got jacked up. Because my cigarette game went way down because a lot of people didn't smoke, especially football players, but I could chew, so I did that. When I stopped playing football, chewing always stayed up, and then the drugs were getting worse and worse and worse. Along with that scene is always the cigarettes, like I said earlier. Then it started to be, if I do a line, I gotta have a cig. After I snort something, I gotta have the cig. After a shot, gotta have a cig. And that got worse and worse. Used both chew and cigarettes the whole time during addiction. Then I go to prison. The first year I was in county jail, no nicotine at all. I chewed on spoons. I would take my spoon from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, break off the handle, and chew on it all day. They started calling me Spoons and Spoon Man and whatever. Then I went through so many of them that I actually would take other people's spoons. And I know that sounds gross, and it is. So they gave me a cup of disinfectant, and I would clean the spoons in there, wash them off, and chew on them. Why? I don't know. It's just how some people say it's weird to say, but that oral fixation, I don't know. I chew on gum, candy, whatever. Then I get to prison. Prison in New York State at the time, you can buy a pouch of tobacco, roll your own. It's about $3.50. You could roll like 30 cigs out of there. Newports, Marlboros, you could buy there, and chew. You could buy chew on commissary or get it sent in from your family. I chewed and smoked the whole time I was in prison. The whole time. Solitary, not consistently because they don't allow it in there, but I had some in there. I actually got in trouble for having it in there. Then get out, get into recovery. I smoked cigarettes my first 2 years out and then moved to the vape. Throughout this whole time, chewed as well. Now it's vaping and chewing. I do both still. I do use a lot of nicotine. I have thrown these out the window at least a dozen times in the last couple years, only to either go search for it an hour later or pull into the vape shop and buy a new one. It's just, I've created it as a terrible habit, using it nonstop. And what makes these so much harder, first of all, I think some of the nicotine levels are insane. The 50 milligram juices are nuts. I use 6 milligram. Also, like, I could just sit on my bed all night and hit this with no smell, nothing. Not like a cigarette where I actually had to get up and go outside and, it smelled and teeth get yellow and fingers get yellow. They make it so much easier to where there's not a ton of outside consequences, so it's not bad. I hit this thing everywhere. It's just another thing, it's on my list of things to work on. I know a lot of people struggle with nicotine. If you use nicotine in whatever capacity, let me know. Let me know if you've tried quitting, if you successfully quit, how you did. If you vape, what milligram do you use? I'm trying. It's just one of those things, one piece at a time. And they always say to keep trying to quit. One of those times it's going to stick. All right, that's my nicotine story. K Ruggs, the Soberdog, and I'm out. See ya.